Happiness doesn't wait until everything in your life is perfect. It doesn't hold off until your job is secure, your bank account is full, or the people around you behave the way you expect. Happiness doesn't promise to arrive on some ideal day in the future, because if you continue to live by the condition when, then, you're only postponing your right to live fully right now. Many people mistakenly believe that if they can just control their circumstances, eliminate the nuisances, or reach a few major milestones, happiness will naturally follow. But that only keeps them chasing an illusion, because life never stops shifting, and anyone who ties their happiness to external stability will sooner or later fall into disappointment. There are days when everything seems to go well, yet inside you feel empty. There are chaotic days, yet you feel a strange sense of peace, because emotional states aren't simply reactions to circumstances. They're reflections of how you live, how you think, what you choose, and how you view everything. Happiness doesn't demand perfection. It only asks that you show up in the right way for each ordinary moment. When you stop chasing a flawless ideal, you begin to see the true value of each simple second, the small but real things unfolding right before your eyes. You can't force yourself to feel joy when you're full of internal conflict, but you can choose to live consciously, to choose actions, thoughts, and responses that bring you closer to inner peace. This isn't a feeling granted at random, it's a skill, one that can be practiced, repeated, and nurtured like any other skill. Just as muscles require consistent training to grow strong, happiness needs a behavioral ecosystem, from small habits to the way you speak to yourself, built and reinforced every day. Neuroscience has shown that up to 40% of human happiness comes from personal, lifestyle, and mindset. That means you don't need a perfect life to feel fulfilled. You need a healthy mental toolkit used regularly like a living ritual. One common mistake we make is expecting happiness to be clear, intense, and obvious, like a loud laugh or a glorious win. But in reality, happiness is often much quieter than that. It comes from sitting still with a morning cup of tea, unhurried. From the satisfaction of completing a task you once delayed. From the moment you look up and see sunlight filtering through leaves, and your heart gently slows down. These things don't make you burst into tears of joy, but they accumulate daily like tiny stones building a sturdy emotional foundation. People often say live life to the fullest, but in truth, living fully doesn't mean doing grand things. It means doing small things with completeness and presence. When you stop seeking fireworks and start appreciating the subtle waves of daily life, you'll be surprised to realize happiness was never gone. It was simply forgotten amidst too many complex expectations. You don't need to pretend to be strong, nor do you need to force yourself to smile. But you can choose not to let negative thoughts take over your inner world. By shifting your focus, you can turn an ordinary day into a meaningful one, not because the world changes, but because you choose to see it with different eyes. Some people face the same situation. One complains, another feels grateful. One blames, another learns. One avoids, another confronts. And the outcomes they experience are completely different. The difference doesn't lie in what they encounter, but in how they move through it. You can't control every external factor, but you can train how you respond. That's where happiness begins to appear, from the short space between what happens and how you choose to react. You don't need to wait for everything to be perfect before allowing yourself to enjoy life, because the truth is, life will never be perfect, but every moment carries within it the potential for beauty if you're awake enough to see it. Happiness isn't a prize for the winner, it's the companion of the one who knows how to live. It's not a destination, it's the material of the journey itself. And if each day you can choose one positive action, one open perspective, one silent moment to truly listen to yourself, then you are already living in happiness, no matter what stage of life you're in. So don't ask, how can I be happy? Ask instead, how did I live today? Because happiness doesn't hide in the future. It lives in how you walk through each day. And if you're truly serious about living fully, start with the simplest thing. Choose again how you see, how you think, and how you respond. From the first light of morning to the last moments before sleep. Happiness doesn't come from luck, it comes from you. And each day is a new opportunity to create it. It's not genetics, nor life circumstances, but your daily habits that shape the majority of the happiness you long for. Research has revealed a surprising truth. Only 10% of your happiness comes from objective conditions such as work, money, living situation, or luck. About 50% is genetic, an emotional predisposition you cannot change. But the remaining 40% is entirely up to you each day through the way you think, react, act, and maintain your mental habits. This isn't just a comforting thought. It's a lever. Because if you can influence nearly half of your emotional experience, why would you hand that power over to circumstances or other people? People spend hours planning finances, tending to appearances, and building careers, yet they leave their inner state to chance. They wait for a free day, a big success, or someone kind enough to make them feel joy. And when those things don't happen, they conclude that life is unfair. But the formula for happiness doesn't lie in the world's hands, it lies in yours, through what you deliberately repeat. Every small behavior, every way you begin your morning, every word you whisper in your mind silently reshapes the entire emotional tone of your life. Emotions are not random reactions, but the result of a system. If you consistently react negatively to unfavorable events, you are training your mind to recognize instability as normal. On the other hand, if you form habits of observing, accepting, and reframing situations in a positive light, you're rewriting the neural pathways of happiness in your brain. This isn't just talk, it's neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change its structure through repeated behavior. One person might start their day checking their phone and feeling left out in a group chat, while another opens their eyes with a silent thank you for simply waking up. One may respond to traffic with anger and honking. Another might play a favorite song and treat it as personal reflection time. These small differences in choices, repeated over time, create two entirely different individuals. Not because of fate, but because of habit. If you want to change how you feel, don't wait for feelings to change. Change your habits. Every repeated behavior is a command sent to the brain that says, "This is how I choose to see life." And the brain, in its absolute loyalty, will program you to live according to what you repeat. Choose unconscious living, you'll get chaos. Choose healthy rituals, you'll gain stability. Happy people aren't always optimistic. They simply engage more in behaviors that make them feel connected, grateful, present, and in control. And all of those are trainable. Start with simple yet high-impact habits like writing down 3 things you're grateful for at the end of the day. Like spending 10 minutes in the morning without touching your phone, just breathing and feeling alive. Like responding to a loved one with kindness instead of a defensive reflex. Like walking instead of complaining. These small things, repeated regularly, soften the rigid mind and open a new way of living you may never have experienced before. Change doesn't begin with massive effort in a single moment. It begins with what you do in the seemingly meaningless ones. And it's those choices, made when no one is watching, that shape who you really are. No need for a grand plan. Just choose the right small thing and do it consciously. Each time you act like a happy person, you move closer to becoming one. And here's the miracle. The brain doesn't distinguish between "I truly am this way" and "I'm practicing to be this way." It only records what you repeat the most. You can choose to live unconsciously, dragged by old reactions, old judgments, and old fears. Or you can interrupt that inertia with a small, fresh act, a more mindful choice, a different question. Every day is a chance to reshape yourself, and no one else can do it for you. Happiness, like all lasting values, doesn't come from what you dream of, it comes from what you repeat. So if you ask, "How can I be happier?" start with a different question. What habit in me is feeding my unhappiness? And then change it. Just one habit, small enough to begin today. Because 40% of your emotional life, a massive proportion, is waiting for you to take command. No one can hold it for you, and no one can take it away if you truly claim it. Gratitude is not a polite reflex or a thank you spoken out of social courtesy. It is not blind optimism trying to find a silver lining in something terrible either. Gratitude is a conscious state of being. It doesn't happen by accident. It is a deliberate choice to look at life with appreciation instead of complaint. In today's fast-pacing world where everything moves at a suffocating speed, most people are not lacking in good things. They're simply lacking the ability to recognize them, and that lack of awareness causes many to live surrounded by abundance and still feel empty. They are not deprived of positive experiences. They've just stopped pausing to feel what truly matters. Practicing gratitude doesn't make difficulties easy, but it completely changes how you move through them. You can't avoid challenges, but you can choose to focus on what still holds value even when everything else seems to fall apart. When you are grateful, you don't deny the pain, you just refuse to let it define your entire reality. Negative emotions may arise, but you're no longer swept away by them, because gratitude pulls you back to center, where you can clearly see that no matter what is happening, there is always something worth holding on to. A warm cup of tea, a gentle sunny afternoon, birdsong in a quiet space, a compassionate glance, morning clarity. These are the small things easily overlooked. Yet it is precisely these things that help people stay grounded in chaos. Gratitude doesn't require grand reasons. It only asks that you slow down enough to realize that every passing moment is an opportunity to experience something kind, if you are sensitive enough to notice. And when you're grateful, you don't just change your mood in the moment. You're actively rebuilding your sensory nervous system. Science has shown that people who practice daily gratitude have lower cortisol levels, deeper sleep, greater stress resilience, and a more positive outlook on life, not because their lives are better, but because they have a different mental filter. They don't look for reasons to complain. They look for reasons to be thankful. And so they find them. Perception does not reflect absolute truth. It reflects your habit of attention. And gratitude is how you reprogram that attention. Some say, I'll be grateful when things get better. But the truth is, things start getting better when you are grateful. Not because circumstances change, but because you change how you interact with them. Gratitude softens wounds, opens your heart to what once seemed insignificant, and makes the ordinary feel special. A grateful person isn't someone without hardships. They're just someone who refuses to let hardship overshadow the rest of life. You don't have to wait for something big to begin. Every day, simply choose to write down 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be grand achievements. Sometimes it's just the fact that you can still breathe deeply, walk in the rain, or receive a call from someone who reached out at just the right moment. Once you start listing them, you'll be surprised to see how generous life has already been. And the act of writing it down begins to awaken a more mindful mind, one that no longer rushes past the kindnesses of life as if they were nothing. If journaling isn't your style, then speak your gratitude, a sincere thank you to a coworker who helped, to a friend who listens, to yourself for not giving up, or simply spend a few minutes at night with your eyes closed, recalling 3 good things that happened that day. That act, even if silent, is gradually restructuring your emotions in a positive direction, not through theory, but through rewiring your psychological response system. Gratitude also eases feelings of comparison and envy. When you appreciate what you already have, you're less tempted to look sideways at how others are living. You're no longer racing to outdo someone else because you're busy experiencing the fullness within yourself. And that sense of fullness doesn't come from possession. It comes from awareness. Gratitude also deepens your connection with others. People are not moved by your success. They are moved by your sincerity. And gratitude is one of the most beautiful forms of sincerity. You can also express gratitude through action, when you help someone without expecting anything in return, when you write an encouraging note, when you share part of what you have. These are all behavioral forms of gratitude. And the interesting thing is, the more you live with gratitude, the more you receive things to be grateful for. Not because you're luckier, but because you're creating a positive cycle where kindness is given and returned naturally. Ultimately, gratitude is not an attitude reserved for when things go well. It's most vital when you feel like you have the least reason to be grateful, when things seem off track, when you're hurt, when life loses its familiar order. That's when gratitude becomes the thread that keeps you standing. It reminds you that something still remains, that there is still something to hold on to, and sometimes that alone is enough to help you keep going. And gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it prevents pain from erasing you. And that is a strength you can train every day with intention, mindfulness, and sincerity. Happiness is not the reward of the successful. It is the inevitable result of those who choose to live with gratitude. Not all change requires a big push. Sometimes it's a small action repeated daily that quietly creates the most lasting transformation. Gratitude journaling is a prime example. It doesn't take much time, doesn't demand great effort, but it has the power to completely shift the way you see the world and how you relate to yourself. In a world full of upheaval, where emotions are easily swept away by noise and speed, the act of sitting down and writing down what you're grateful for each day is a way to reclaim mastery over your mind. This is not a shallow emotional exercise. It is a tool for restructuring your awareness. It stops you from chasing after what's missing and helps you start noticing what is already here. The human brain is naturally wired to focus on the negative, a phenomenon called the negativity bias. That is, one bad thing tends to be remembered more than dozens of good ones. A single criticism can erase 100 compliments. One disappointing experience can overshadow an entire sunny day. This is a natural survival mechanism, but in modern life, it unintentionally robs us of our sense of sufficiency. And gratitude journaling is a way to hack the brain by dimming the brightness of sorrow and enhancing the sharpness of kindness. All it takes is writing down 3 things you feel grateful for each day. They don't need to be big events or breakthroughs. In fact, the simpler the better. A good meal, a deep sleep, a message from an old friend, or just the moment you look out the window and realize the sky is beautifully clear today. When you write those things down, you are forcing your brain to pause, to step back and reframe. You're sending a signal to your mind that says, I choose to focus on what's enough instead of what's lacking. And once that becomes a habit, your inner world will no longer be dictated by the turbulence of the outer one. Something magical happens when you turn the act of recording gratitude into a daily ritual. You don't just feel more positive while writing, but your awareness throughout the following day is gently reshaped in a more compassionate direction. You start noticing more of what you have. You become more sensitive to beauty, whether in visuals, sounds, or human gestures. And gradually you develop a new lens through which to view life. Not one fogged by scarcity, but one illuminated by active gratitude. This practice is especially helpful during times when you feel like there's nothing left to hold on to, when everything seems tangled, when loss makes you question all meaning. The act of sitting down, picking up a pen and writing one small thing that still brings warmth, that is the act of reclaiming inner power. Not because you're blindly optimistic, but because you refuse to let circumstances dictate the entirety of your emotional life. It's a gentle kind of discipline, yet full of strength. No fancy setup is needed. A simple notebook, a pen that feels comfortable in your hand, and a quiet few minutes each day are enough. And if handwriting isn't practical for you, you can type it into your phone. What matters is not the format, it's the consistency. Each time you write, you pause, realign yourself, and send a signal to your brain that says, I am still present, I am still appreciating, and that alone is enough to make a difference. Some may say, what do I have to be grateful for in my life? But that very question reflects the exact thing you need to shift. It's not that life lacks things to be grateful for, it's that you've become accustomed to seeing only the flaws. When you push yourself to write 3 things every day, Even if it feels forced at first, after a few weeks, you'll begin to notice that you're more observant, more emotionally responsive, and gentler with yourself. At that point, you'll no longer have to search for things to write. They'll naturally emerge throughout your day. Gratitude journaling also creates a valuable emotional timeline. When you go through hard times, you can flip back through old pages and read the things that once made you feel grateful, and realize that there were moments when you felt full, warm, even joyful over something small. And if it happened once, it means it can happen again. You didn't lose it, you just forgot. The act of writing also helps organize your emotions. By recording them, you are translating vague feelings into clear, specific words. This helps you take charge of your emotions instead of being led by them. It's like giving your emotions a seat, listening to them, naming them, and then letting them go with gratitude, whether it's joy or sorrow. Treat gratitude journaling as part of your mental self-care ritual, no different from brushing your teeth, washing your face, or eating each day. You don't write to seem good, you write to protect your inner world from decaying in unconsciousness. And if you keep this up, not only will your mind be nourished, but your heart will also begin to relearn how to respond delicately to life. It's not the big things that make the difference. It's the consistent repetition of the small, right, intentional acts. And gratitude journaling, though seemingly simple, is one of the most powerful actions you can take to restore a life of happiness from within, quiet, unadorned, but deep enough to keep you grounded. Every time you pick up the pen, you're telling life, I am here, and I choose to appreciate. And life, as always, will respond with more than you ever expected. Gratitude is not meant to remain a silent inner emotion. When you begin to extend it outward, transforming it into words, actions, and conscious presence with others, you don't just amplify your own joy, you awaken positive emotions in those around you. Happiness at a deeper level is not a closed personal state. It is a current. The more it's shared, the stronger it becomes. And gratitude is the quiet source that unlocks that current in human relationship. When you feel grateful but don't express it, that emotion is merely a flicker inside. But when you articulate it through words, actions, or sincere recognition of someone, it becomes an energy with the power to ripple outwards. You not only make the recipient feel seen, but you also awaken in them a deeper sense of connection and appreciation for their own life. Gratitude has the power to heal, not just the giver, but also the receiver. It creates a space of shared humanity where two people both feel they are living with meaning. A well-timed thank you, a small gesture of recognition, a warm glance in place of forgotten words. These may be the only things someone needs on what feels like an ordinary day. When you pause to tell a loved one you're grateful for their constant presence. When you message an old friend to remind them how they helped you through a tough time. When you quietly repay kindness with an unspoken gesture. These seemingly small acts plant seeds of lasting bonds, trust in others, and a kind of happiness that no longer feels isolated. People often forget that gratitude is a form of communication, and like any language, it must be practiced to become natural. You can start by saying thank you more often, not as empty politeness, but as full presence in the moment. Thank the server for their smile. Thank your colleague for a small but timely action. Thank your partner for their patience on a difficult day. When spoken from sincerity, a thank you holds more power than any material gift, because it says, I see you, I value what you've done, you matter. Gratitude, when shared, doesn't just create temporary positive feelings. It helps build a culture of kindness in the spaces you inhabit. A family where appreciation is expressed becomes warmer. A team where gratitude is practiced becomes more cohesive. A community where people aren't afraid to say thank you becomes more human. Happiness, then, is no longer an individual goal, but a shared fabric that nourishes collective spirit. Science also confirms that people who regularly express gratitude have better relationships, are more liked, and experience less conflict. In such environments, defensiveness drops, sincerity rises, and people feel a stronger sense of belonging. You don't need grand gestures to change the atmosphere around you. You just need to be the one who begins with a single grateful act. And from there, you set off a domino effect of positivity, reaching others effortlessly. Spreading gratitude also helps you step out of selfishness and open your heart to the world. When you acknowledge someone's effort, sacrifice, or kindness, you are also practicing humility, a quality that deepens your humanity. It reminds you that you're not alone in this journey, that many people, sometimes strangers, have positively shaped your life in unseen ways. And when you're grateful for them, even if they never know it, you are mending the threads of connection often frayed by busyness or indifference. The habit of spreading gratitude also dramatically reduces negative reactions in conflict. When you approach someone with acknowledgement instead of judgment, the conversation takes a completely different path. You might begin with, "I know you tried," before mentioning your concern. That way of speaking doesn't make you weak. On the contrary, it shows that you're strong enough to view situations from multiple angles and balance personal feelings with the kindness necessary for healthy communication. Sometimes gratitude doesn't need to be spoken. It lies in the way you listen without interrupting, in remembering someone's birthday without a reminder, in choosing gentleness when you have every right to be angry. Every time you act this way, you are planting seeds of trust, of connection, of compassion. And from those seeds, happiness begins to bloom, not loudly, but steadily. You can't control how others treat you, but you can always control how you treat them. And if you choose to do so from a place of gratitude, you'll find the world responds with a very different energy. Not because you demanded change, but because you created a new standard for yourself. Spreading gratitude doesn't need an audience nor recognition, but it's this very absence of expectation that makes happiness more profound. You don't give thanks to get something back. You do it because it's the kind of person you choose to be. And from that choice, you begin to build a life where happiness doesn't come from something far away, but from simple, sincere, and meaningful connections, day by day. You weren't born to be separate. No one was born to live like an island. From biological structure to the nervous system, from micro responses in the brain to deep-seated emotions in the heart, everything within you is designed to seek connection. The need to belong, to be heard, to be seen. These are not fleeting emotional cravings, but fundamental components of how your brain operates. And no true happiness can grow in the environment of isolation. A person can succeed in silence, can appear strong while alone, but if they never connect with anyone, if they never feel bonded to another, there will always be a quiet, persistent void inside, one that no achievement or logic can fill. Many believe loneliness is merely an emotional state, but science has shown otherwise. Prolonged loneliness has direct effects on physical health. It weakens the immune system, increases the risk of depression, and damages areas of the brain associated with motivation and social bonding. Humans don't just want connection, they need it to live meaningfully. Like plants need light, like a heart needs rhythm, you need someone who can reach into the deepest part of your emotions and reflect back your essence through their presence, not to be validated, but to feel that you are still part of something greater, a community, a family, a friendship, even a fleeting yet sincere connection. The irony is that modern society makes us more isolated than ever. Amidst countless social media platforms, messages, emails, and notifications, we seem to be talking more but understanding less. We interact easily yet rarely touch true presence. And it is this thin but dangerous gap that has created a generation that appears connected but is internally exhausted by loneliness. True happiness cannot be found if you only live in your own mind, swirling in unshared thoughts, receiving no response of empathy from another human being. Okay, so let's dive in and open up. You don't need hundreds of relationships to feel complete. Just one deep connection, one true friendship, One person who listens without judgment is enough. Sometimes a single moment of sincere conversation, a glance filled with understanding, an unconditional hug can soothe the emptiness you thought no one could see. But to receive that, you must dare to open up. You cannot connect if you always wear a mask. No one can reach you if you keep your distance out of pride or fear of getting hurt. True connection begins when you dare to be honest. When you say that you're tired, that you need someone, that you're not okay, but learning to be. It is that honesty, unperfect, unpolished, that makes others feel close, because deep down, everyone is looking for the same thing: a place to belong, someone to trust, a relationship that doesn't require constant strength. You can start with simple actions. Call a friend you haven't spoken to in a while. Ask a coworker how they are with genuine care, not social niceties. Truly listen to a family member without interrupting. Each of these acts, though small, helps reweave the threads that busy life has carelessly unraveled. And through those connections, you begin to feel the current of life again, something that cannot exist in isolation. No one is strong enough to not need anyone. Real strength lies in acknowledging the need for connection without shame. The happiest people are not those who close off and tightly control every emotion. They are those with the courage to open up, to build and nurture relationships with sincerity, because they understand that happiness doesn't come from avoiding vulnerability. It comes from placing trust in the right places. If you've been hurt in a relationship, that doesn't mean all connections are dangerous. Remember, a wound doesn't heal by avoidance. It heals when you dare to walk through it again, with more awareness, with greater maturity. And this time, you'll know how to choose better people, set clearer boundaries, and love yourself enough not to trade your peace for a toxic bond. Make space for healthy relationships to enter your life. No rush, no need for many, just authenticity. When you allow yourself to connect, you also create a space where others feel safe to come closer, and from there, happiness is no longer a solo effort. It becomes a shared journey, with shared laughter, mutual support in hard times, and warm looks that say, you don't have to go through it all alone. In a world that changes overnight, the one thing that keeps you standing is human connection. A timely hand to hold can save a soul in free fall. A sincere check-in can stop someone from giving up. And a deeply genuine relationship can be the bridge that brings you back to yourself, to meaning, and to a happiness nothing else can replace. You don't need to isolate to be strong. Allow yourself to connect, not as a weakness, but as the wisdom of someone who understands. No one remains happy in solitude forever. You were born to belong, and every time you choose to open your heart, you move your life closer to lasting joy. Modern life has made people increasingly skilled at talking, yet they've forgotten how to truly converse. We exchange information, reply to messages, update statuses, but rarely do we actually sit down, look each other in the eyes, and speak from the heart. In this noisy world, a sincere conversation has become a rarity. But what you may not realize is that a single, timely, deep, and genuine conversation can pull someone out of the feeling of invisibility. It can rekindle a light they thought had gone out. It can soothe a soul quietly, breaking in silence. The power of a sincere conversation does not lie in the number of words spoken, but in the quality of presence. When you listen without interrupting, when you ask questions not to judge but to understand, when you don't try to fix someone but simply stay present with them, you create a safe space where the other person can be themselves without fear of being hurt. That sense of safety is the foundation upon which hidden truths are spoken, wounds are acknowledged, and trust begins to return. A real conversation is not a debate, not a contest of who is more right or more informed. It is a space where two souls are allowed to show up in the most honest way possible. When you speak truthfully, no embellishment, no evasion, you allow the other person to do the same. And when both people dare to lower their armor, what is created is not a fleeting emotion, but a deep connection powerful enough to heal wounds you thought had long gone numb. Sometimes what someone remembers most isn't what you said, but how they felt being heard. In this world, the rarest thing isn't money or opportunity. It's the full attention of another human being. When you set your phone aside, look someone in the eye, and truly listen with your heart, you are giving them the most precious gift, presence. And in that moment, the conversation rises above words and touches the deepest part of the human spirit. A sincere conversation can awaken self-awareness. When you speak about what you're feeling, you are first forced to be honest with yourself, and when you hear someone share the journey they're going through, you begin to see a world beyond your own story. You not only understand others better, you also come to understand yourself more clearly. Conversation in that sense is no longer just interaction, it becomes a form of inner growth, where both people emerge more mature after it ends. Sustainable happiness cannot be built in isolation, nor can it thrive in superficial relationships. It needs ground to take root, and that ground is made of sincere conversations, where you don't have to strain to impress, don't have to hide your real feelings to appear fine, and don't need to be perfect to be loved. You just need to dare to be real and be patient enough to hold space for the other person to be real too. There are people who carry pain for years simply because no one ever asked the right question. There are those who don't even realize they're lost until they say something aloud and hear the truth in their own voice. The right conversation with the right person at the right time can be a turning point. Not because it solves everything, but because it opens a new door in the mind, where someone begins to allow themselves to be real, to feel, to change. You don't need to be a therapist to create a healing conversation. You just need to be genuine, to care sincerely, to have the courage to sit down, face someone, and talk about what truly matters instead of avoiding it. In a world full of illusions, the one who dares to speak the truth becomes the most trustworthy. And sometimes all it takes is one honest sentence to make someone feel they are no longer alone. If you want lasting happiness, don't just invest in knowledge, in achievements, in goals. Invest in real conversations, because it is in those conversations that you learn to understand others, to understand yourself, and to understand that life was never meant to be a solitary journey. Each person you listen to with your heart becomes a part of the journey you help enrich. And in return, each time someone listens to you sincerely, you take one step closer to your own essence. Don't wait until everything falls apart to start asking questions. Don't wait until loved ones are gone to want to talk. Life offers no warranty for relationships, but it always offers a new chance, each day, to listen, to share, to speak the truth, and to create a connection that nothing can replace. And from there, happiness stops being a vague concept. It becomes something you are consciously building. Each time you choose to speak truthfully, listen deeply, and live authentically. Whether you're an introvert who enjoys solitude or an extrovert who thrives in crowds, you cannot be truly happy without a positive circle of connection. No one is strong enough to sustainably grow in a negative environment, and no one is independent enough not to need people who genuinely inspire and support them through life. The question isn't what kind of personality you have. It's who you allow into your inner world and who you let stay long enough to shape how you think, how you live, and how you face the world. A positive circle of connection isn't a large network filled with surface-level social ties. It's a mental and emotional ecosystem where each person's presence brings peace, motivation, wisdom, or steady trust. One person might help you see yourself more honestly. Another might give you the courage to take action when you hesitate. And sometimes, just one person who truly listens and believes in you is enough to change the entire direction of your life. Introverts are often misunderstood as not needing connection. In truth, they crave deeper relationships more than anyone. They don't want to talk a lot, but they long for conversations that truly matter. They don't enjoy crowds, but they are deeply attached to those that truly trust. For introverts, a positive circle doesn't need to be big, it just needs to be right. They need a few people who understand silence, respect personal space, and never pressure them to be someone they're not. Extroverts, while naturally good at making friends and connecting, often fall into shallow circles where everything revolves around laughter, activity, and surface-level fun. They may know many people, but still lack the feeling of being deeply understood. That's why extroverts also need to learn to filter their connections, seeking those who go beyond good times and remain steady when everything falls apart. A positive circle isn't about how many friends you have, it's about the quality of the energy they bring into your life. To build that circle, you must have the courage to choose. You can't keep people around who constantly dismiss your dreams, question your every effort, or regularly spread negativity and still expect to be happy. Every time you sit with someone who only judges, criticizes, or complains, you are unconsciously allowing them to reprogram your mindset toward exhaustion and limitation. On the other hand, every time you talk to someone who makes you feel stronger, clearer, and more at peace, you are watering the seeds of positivity inside your mind. No one can build a positive circle of connection without starting from within. If you keep betraying your own values just to be loved, you will attract people who don't truly respect you. If you stay silent to avoid conflict while tolerating what's wrong, you'll surround yourself with toxic relationships held together by quiet suffering. But when you start living authentically, speaking truthfully, and clearly choosing what you want to keep in your life, people on the same frequency will naturally show up. It's not magic, it's resonance. Don't be afraid to shrink your circle if it helps you breathe easier, think clearer, live more truthfully. You owe no one your presence if they constantly make you doubt your worth. You don't have to maintain a relationship just because of the past, especially if its present is damaging your future. A positive circle requires bravery, the courage to let go of those who pull you down, and the intention to seek out those who lift you up. Positivity doesn't come from people always being cheerful or saying pretty things. It comes from honesty, from genuine presence, from the way someone cares without performing. They may be direct, but they don't harm you. They may be quiet, but they are always there. And above all, they never make you feel like you have to try hard to be worthy of love. If you don't yet have that kind of circle, start building it today. Notice who makes you feel lighter after each interaction. Cherish and invest more in the relationships that give you room to grow instead of suffocating you with outdated expectations. Be the one who brings positive energy first, and you'll be surprised how people with the same energy begin to appear, quietly but genuinely. Happiness is not a destination, it's the journey, and who you're walking it with. And sometimes just walking beside the right person changes the whole world. So whether you're introspective or outgoing, remember, your emotional environment is shaped by the people you choose to walk with. And if you choose wisely, each passing day won't just be another day lived, it'll be a day lived right. Big achievements draw admiration, but it's the quiet, persistent, small wins, repeated day after day, that truly shape a happy life. Achievements may be celebrated, recorded on performance boards or social media, but small wins, like waking up earlier than yesterday, completing a task you've long postponed, saying no to a familiar temptation, go unnoticed. No one sees them, no one applauds them. Only you know. Yet in those moments, when you choose what's right over what's easy, you give yourself a subtle but profound form of trust, that you are in control of your own life. Many people only allow themselves to feel happy when a specific outcome is achieved. A promotion, a salary raise, buying a house, losing weight, succeeding in a major project. But if you live your entire life waiting for those rare moments, most of your time will be spent in disappointment. Because big achievements take time, they require a process, and often arrive slower than expected. Happiness, on the other hand, if you know how to look, can be found right now in every small win you strive for during an ordinary day. Small wins don't change the world, but they change you. They push you out of procrastination. They build endurance and self-respect. Most importantly, they create positive momentum, helping you believe that you can keep going. People who regularly accumulate small victories are the ones capable of sustaining long-term motivation because they don't depend on grand outcomes to feel worthy. They find encouragement in their daily actions, and from there, build a stable, disciplined, and confident version of themselves. The most common trap of perfectionists is, "I'll be happy when." And that sentence never ends. When one goal is achieved, another arises. When one milestone is reached, it suddenly feels insufficient. But if you learn to acknowledge every small step you take, you'll no longer be haunted by the pressure to always be exceptional. You'll begin to live with appreciation for each part of the process, each decision, each effort, even if no one but you is aware of it. Happiness is the result of a sense of progress, and progress doesn't need to be grand, you just need to be a little better than yesterday. That's enough to feel alive rather than just existing. One finished page of a book, one call you finally made, one time you cleaned your desk instead of delaying, one healthy meal you chose instead of a rushed one. All of these are steps forward. When you learn to recognize them, you start to feel proud of yourself, not because you're better than others, but because you're being kind and honest with your own journey. If you notice, the people who smile often, who encourage others, who maintain lasting peace of mind, are usually not those living the most extravagant lives. They are those who know how to savor the small wins of each day. They give thanks for keeping calm in moments of anger. They acknowledge their efforts even when no one cheers them on. They build joy not from flashy things, but from seemingly small moments that, when accumulated, form a strong and grounded inner spirit. You too can start again today. Instead of waiting for a big achievement, define a small win for yourself each day, something within your control. Today you might choose to finish one important task before checking social media. You might focus for 30 minutes without distraction. You might take time to reach out to an old friend. And when you complete it, don't brush it off as nothing. Acknowledge it. Be thankful. And let these small things become the foundation for something far greater in the future. You don't need to do something extraordinary to feel worthy. You just need to persist in doing what's right every day. And then small wins will accumulate into big changes. Your confidence doesn't come from short bursts of success, but from the habit of not giving up on things that seem trivial. And at some point when you look back, you'll be amazed at how far you've come, not because it was fast, but because it was deep. Not because it was flashy, but because it was real. Happiness doesn't wait at the finish line. It is present in every step you take if you're mindful enough to see it. And small wins are reminders that you are still choosing to live, to grow, and to take charge of this journey bit by bit. No validation needed, just the clarity that today you've once again overcome a part of yourself. Every action you repeat each day, no matter how small or unnoticed it may seem, is a brick you're quietly placing to build the foundation of your life. It's not the explosive moments or the grand decisions, but the silent, repeated daily choices that shape a person's mindset, either grounded from within or fragile in the face of challenge. A person doesn't suddenly become strong. Just as a wall cannot stand firm without a foundation built from countless patient bricks, every time you choose persistence over giving up, waking early over sleeping in, reading a book over scrolling aimlessly, holding your words instead of lashing out, you are laying a brick for self-control, for resilience, for internal endurance. And likewise, each time you choose laziness, compromise, procrastination, or excuses, you are removing a brick, weakening the very structure you're trying to build. People don't collapse because of a single crisis. They collapse because they haven't built a strong enough inner foundation to withstand it when it comes. Life doesn't promise constant peace, but if you've constructed your inner structure with discipline, integrity, intentional action, and positive habits, then even in the storm, you can remain standing. Not because you're better than others, but because you've made yourself reliable to yourself. Small actions are things others often don't see, but you know them. You know whether you chose to read 10 more pages today or not. whether you focused and finished your task or postponed it again, whether you ate mindfully or gave in to impulse. These small choices won't turn you into a genius overnight, but they are quiet promises you make to your subconscious that you are serious about your life, that you don't live based on fleeting feelings, but by self-chosen principles. And the subconscious, like a loyal machine, will reflect that belief through strength in your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. Each repeated action becomes a neural fold. Each fold gradually shapes an operating system, and that system governs how you make decisions, handle pressure, manage emotions, and define your values. Small actions are not meaningless. They are the mechanics of building character. You don't need endless theories to change your life. You just need a list of small things you commit to doing daily and carry them out with uncompromising consistency. Some ask, how do I stay grounded amidst negativity, criticism, or unexpected situations? The answer doesn't lie in trying to control the environment, but in how much you can control within yourself. The person who trains their mind daily through deliberate action, whether it's a 20-minute walk, 10 minutes of meditation, listing 3 things to be grateful for, or simply keeping a promise to themselves, that person becomes as solid as a rock. Not because they lack emotion, but because they have built a core that isn't easily shaken. We often overestimate the power of inspiration and underestimate the power of habit. Inspiration is the flame, but habit is the dry wood. Without habit, inspiration dies the moment the wind blows. But if you diligently gather small sticks each day through positive actions, you'll sustain the fire longer than anyone else. And that endurance is what separates those who merely dream from those who truly transform. You don't need anyone to recognize what you do today. You don't need to prove to anyone that you're trying. Because every small action you take, if it is right, consistent, and purposeful, will become an inseparable part of your identity. One day, when someone calls you disciplined, calm, confident, reliable, you'll understand it's not a compliment. It's the result of hundreds of days in which you quietly chose the right thing when no one was watching. Never underestimate the small. One misaligned brick can make an entire wall tilt. One wrong repeated action can form a negative habit, pulling you away from your truest self. But if you adjust each brick, refine each behavior, and do each small thing properly, then over time, you'll build a self that nothing can break. Stability is not a feeling, it's an outcome. The result of thousands of small actions you've consistently chosen, done, and lived without anyone forcing you, without anyone needing to notice. And if today you feel unsteady, don't look for something grand to rescue you. Return to the small things you can do right now. That's where you'll find your sense of control, your stability, and your inner power. A person can lose direction in life, but they will never be completely lost if they continue a single positive habit, no matter how small, because that's the signal that the fire within is still burning. And as long as you keep choosing one right action each day, you are still laying the next brick for your solid and unshakable mindset. Emotions are energy. And energy doesn't simply disappear, it must be transformed. When you hold on to sadness for too long without speaking it, releasing it, or moving your body, your physical self becomes a container for pressure. Unresolved tension imprints itself on your heartbeat, your breath, your sleep, and even your thinking. You cannot think positively when your body is stuck in a negative state, nor can you find peace when your mind is racing without pause. Movement is the oldest self-healing mechanism humans possess. You don't need to be an athlete, have a gym membership, or run a marathon. You simply need to move. Walk, stretch, rotate your body. Breathe deeply while standing under sunlight. Every motion is a message you send to your nervous system. I have not fallen. I am still alive. I can shift my state. And as your body begins to move, your emotional flow starts to find its path again. But movement alone is not enough. If you move unconsciously, burying yourself in work or exercise as a way to avoid your emotions, you're merely filling the void temporarily, not healing it. That's why movement must be paired with mindfulness. Mindfulness is the art of being fully present in each action, each breath, each step. When you walk and know you are walking, when you inhale and are aware that you are inhaling, when you wash dishes, clean the floor, cook a meal, and do so with full attention, these no longer remain daily chores, but become rituals of healing. The combination of movement and mindfulness is like a well-synchronized duo. One is the physical flow. The other is the conscious stream. When both are in motion, you're no longer pulled into the past or worried about the future. You are here. You are living. And it is that presence that becomes the true anchor, keeping you steady through upheaval. Science has shown that people who engage in light movement regularly, such as walking, yoga, or simply standing up to move every 90 minutes, have lower stress levels, deeper sleep, and faster mental recovery. When paired with mindfulness, you don't just calm the body, you also reestablish your relationship with yourself. You stop running from emotions and begin to listen to them. You stop forcing the mind and begin to regulate it. Mindfulness doesn't require you to become a meditation master. It only asks that you be truly present while doing something, instead of letting your mind be pulled by 1,000 thoughts. When you eat, just eat. When you listen to music, just listen. When you walk, feel the ground beneath your feet. That alone helps your mind settle, your heart rate slow, and a quiet space open within you, where there is no panic, no judgment, only pure presence. In life's stormiest moments, people often try to control situations. But what truly needs control is not the circumstance, it's your inner response. And to develop that control, you must train yourself to reconnect with your body, not through force, but through intentional movement infused with awareness. When you feel overwhelmed, instead of tensing up or forcing yourself to think positively, stand up, step outside, and walk slowly in silence. Don't try to solve the problem. Don't try to analyze it. Let your body lead. You'll be surprised how just a few minutes of mindful movement can offer you a new perspective, not because the situation changed, but because you're no longer reacting from fear. You're responding from clarity. Happiness isn't found in the absence of trouble. It lies in your ability to remain steady within yourself when things no longer go your way. And to build that steadiness, you can't just read books or follow advice. You need to do something with your body. Consciously. You need to create moments throughout the day where you intentionally reconnect with your breath, your movement, and the life flowing through you. That's how you withstand the storm, not through brute force, but through the soft strength of presence and adjustment. You don't need to meditate for hours. You don't need to train like an athlete, but you do need to make a promise to yourself that each day, no matter how busy you are, you will spend at least 10 minutes moving with awareness. And if you can keep that promise, you'll begin to notice a change that can't quite be named. You'll be calmer, gentler, and deeper in how you live, how you love, and how you meet life. In a chaotic world, the duo of movement and mindfulness is the anchor that keeps your inner ship from drifting. You don't need lofty philosophies. You don't need loud solutions. You just need to return to yourself, one step, one breath at a time, and you already have all the grounding you need to pass through any storm life sends your way. You don't need to sit cross-legged in a quiet room, hold your breath, or suppress your thoughts to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't some advanced technique. It's the ability to live fully in the present moment, where you are genuinely present in your actions, your emotions, and your breath without being swept away by anything else. It's not a state of emptiness or blankness, but a state of awareness, where you see everything that's happening without getting carried away by it. Mindfulness is when you drink water and clearly feel the coolness flowing down your throat. It's when you're washing your hands and are aware of the water touching your skin. It's when you're having a conversation and you listen not to reply, but to truly understand what the other person is saying. It's presence without distraction, without haste, without autopilot. Modern humans are lost in speed. Every action becomes a rushed reflex, every emotion covered by constant distraction. You open your phone without remembering why. You eat without knowing whether the food tastes good. You listen to someone share their feelings, but your mind is thinking about an unsent email. The absence of mindfulness doesn't weaken you instantly, but it gradually erodes your awareness, severing the connection between you and your own experience. And from that, happiness becomes abstract, distant, not because it's not there, but because you've lost the ability to feel it. Mindfulness doesn't require you to do more. On the contrary, it asks you to pause briefly in whatever you're doing to truly feel it. Not to do it faster, but to do it more deeply. Not to live more hurriedly, but to live more intentionally. When you're having breakfast, put your phone down and eat in silence. When you're walking, feel the soles of your feet touching the ground, the breeze brushing your cheek, the rustling of the leaves. When you're showering, let the water flow over you and simply be with that sensation. This isn't a luxury for people with time. It's essential for anyone who wants to reclaim balance. The human mind tends to drift into the past or leap into the future. And that's what causes us to live in anxiety, regret, anger, or expectation. But the present is the only place you can truly take control. Every transformation begins in the present. Every deep joy, lasting peace, or real healing, energy, cannot happen unless you are fully present where you stand. That's why mindfulness isn't a destination, but a way of living, a way of choosing to slow your pace in a speeding world, to hold on to the most precious thing, yourself. You don't need to eliminate every thought to be mindful. You just need to recognize that they're there and not follow them. When a thought arises, you don't have to judge it or push it away. You can simply tell yourself, there's a thought. And then return to your breath, to your step, to whatever you're doing. The more you practice this, the more you build your inner freedom. Not manipulated by emotion, not controlled by a chaotic mind. You'll clearly feel that you're no longer being swept away by everything that happens, but instead choosing to respond with intention. Mindfulness is the anchor that keeps your heart steady in waves of information and emotion. It helps you recognize when you're reacting unconsciously, when you're being pulled by fear, when you're losing connection with yourself. And once you've noticed that, you have the power to return. You don't need to change your entire life. Happiness doesn't come from grand events, but from the quality of experience you have in each small moment. And mindfulness is the key that unlocks that quality. When you live mindfully, you taste your food better, sleep more deeply, love more sincerely, and work more creatively, not because the outside world has changed, but because you've changed your approach within. You're no longer someone chasing after everything, but someone who lives with everything, fully and fully. No one lives mindfully 24 hours a day, but if you can pause just 3 times a day, once in the morning when you wake up, once at lunch while eating, and once at night before sleeping, and ask yourself, am I truly present right now? Then you've already begun the journey back to yourself. A journey that doesn't require much theory, doesn't demand special skills. All it needs is your commitment to be real with this moment. And then each passing day won't just be time lost, but a meaningful experience, truly lived. In a world full of noise, mindfulness is the quiet place you can return to. Not to escape, but to restore your connection with yourself. Each time you pause and become truly present, you're sending yourself a message. I deserve to live fully, even if just for one moment. And if you can hold on to that moment each day, it will become the strongest foundation upon which you build a deeper, more meaningful, and truly joyful life. From within. You don't see life as it is, you see it through your own lens. And that lens is shaped by your experiences, wounds, expectations, fears, and the beliefs you unconsciously carry from the past. The same event, one person sees opportunity, another sees only problems. The same words, one person lets them go, another holds on for a week. Not because the world is different, but because the perspectives are different. And when you change your perspective, not only do you shift how you feel about a situation, you transform the entire energy you bring into life. An event is not inherently positive or negative until you label it. Life doesn't intend to hurt you or deliberately hand out injustice. Life simply reflects the energy you bring to it. If you see everything from a victim's mindset, you'll find evidence of unfairness everywhere. But if you see with the mindset of a creator, you'll view every challenge as an opportunity to develop a quality you never knew you had. Change doesn't begin when the outside world transforms. It begins when you're brave enough to shift how you perceive that world. Changing your perspective doesn't mean making excuses for negativity or sugarcoating reality. It means choosing to see things with a wider, deeper eye, from a higher level of awareness. It's when you ask, what can I learn from this, instead of, why is this happening to me? It's when you stop blaming and begin taking responsibility for your emotions. Because when you no longer demand the world to change first, that's when you truly reclaim power over your life. Every time you change your perspective, you're rewriting the script of your life. A rejection can be an ending if you see it as failure, but it can also be a turning point if you view it as a necessary redirection, guiding you to a better path. A broken relationship can make you feel abandoned, or it can help you realize you need to learn how to love yourself before expecting anyone else to love you properly. Every experience is a teacher if you're willing to learn. And the first step to learning is to see things differently. The deepest transformations don't come from doing more, but from seeing more clearly. When you change how you view someone, you change how you respond to them. When you change how you see yourself, you change how you live each day. And when you change how you see adversity, you no longer fear it, but begin to walk through it with a quiet yet unwavering strength. The world doesn't need to revolve around your wishes. What the world needs is for you to change how you engage with it. And in that shift, new doors open. There are perspectives you've believed to be true for years, only because you never questioned them. There are limitations you thought were facts, but were really conclusions drawn in a moment of weakness. Changing perspective doesn't mean denying the past. It means looking back at it with the maturity of who you are now. When you're mature enough, you no longer need the world to apologize for your healing. You only need one realization, that you're strong enough not to be defined by what happened. The way you see life also determines how life sees you. A person who carries energy of gratitude, openness, and positivity will often receive opportunities, affection, and companionship. A person who carries doubt, fear, and emotional closure will attract experiences that confirm those beliefs. You can't expect life to feel light when you carry a heavy gaze, but when you view life as a student, without bitterness, without blind reaction, you become the one directing your own stream of experiences. Perspective doesn't shift overnight, but it begins the moment you decide not to let negative emotions dictate your behavior, the moment you ask an old question with a new mindset, the moment you stop saying, I can't, and replace it with, I'm learning how to, the moment you look at someone who hurt you and wonder, could they have been hurt too? That's not weakness, it's emotional intelligence on a higher level. Happiness doesn't come from everything outside going smoothly. It comes from your ability to adjust within, so you're not swept away by circumstances. And every time you shift your perspective, even just a little, you open up new mental, emotional, and behavioral space. You stop reacting the old way. You stop closing your heart like before. You're no longer the person shaped solely by the past. You become someone with the ability to redefine reality, and that is true freedom. And that is true freedom. Life doesn't change because you beg it to. It changes when you dare to see it differently and act from that new vision. That's why every journey of personal development begins with awareness. You can't control everything, but you can control how you interpret something. And when you understand it deeply, you no longer panic. You move forward, not because the world changed, but because you now see it with a completely different mindset. No one can control everything that happens to them. Accidents, losses, misunderstandings, failures, these are inevitable parts of any life. But what truly makes the difference between someone who collapses and someone who grows is not the event itself, but how they respond. Because it is the response that shapes the emotional experience, not the event itself. Some people encounter a minor obstacle and immediately complain or give up. Others face great loss but remain calm, restructure, and move forward. Their minds are not biologically stronger. They simply differ in one key aspect: the ability to choose their response. Happiness does not come from avoiding all risks, but from training yourself to have an inner strength so resilient that no matter what happens, you know how to redefine its meaning. You can't choose every event, but you can always choose the meaning you assign to it. And it is from that meaning that emotions are born. A criticism can be an insult if you let pride take over. But it can also be a valuable guide if you set ego aside and see it with maturity. The end of a relationship can be suffering if you cling to it, but it can also be liberation if you see it as a necessary cleansing to move forward. You can turn a negative event into the foundation of your strength if you are brave enough not to react from old habits. Emotions are consequences, not destiny. Your first reaction doesn't reflect your true nature. It reflects your nervous system's old habits. But your second reaction, the moment you pause, look deeply into what just happened, and choose your response, that is when you truly begin to take control of your life. Because from that moment on, you are no longer living by instinct, but by awareness. When something happens, it carries no inherent emotion. But how you interpret it will determine the mental state you carry through the day. And if you don't learn to manage that, you'll live your whole life being dragged by other people's emotions, actions, and the external environment. You become a victim not because life is unfair, but because you've never stopped to ask, can I respond differently? That question, simple but powerful, is the starting point for inner happiness, liberating your mind from all automatic reactions. No one forces you to be angry when insulted, anxious in the face of risk, or sad when you fail. You just react that way because you've been conditioned over the years. But any reaction can be retrained if you're willing to practice the power of choice. Every time something triggers you, pause. Don't speak too soon. Don't decide too quickly. Don't label too fast. Just pause. Take a deep breath. Ask, is this reaction truly taking me where I want to go? And if not, you have the right to choose again. Here's something interesting. When you change how you respond, you also change how others treat you, because the world always reflects the energy you emit. Someone who angers easily often attracts frustrating situations. Someone calm and grounded influences their surroundings to adjust, not because the world favors them, but because they've changed their core energy. And that energy over time builds a safe, trustworthy, and vibrant living space. A truly mature person is not someone who never gets angry or confused. It's someone who knows when to stop so as not to let their reaction destroy what is valuable. Someone who recognizes their emotions rising but doesn't act on them. Someone who doesn't turn anger into hurtful words or fear into impulsive decisions. Someone who can sit in the storm yet maintain a stillness within. And that stillness is the place where true inner strength is formed. Lasting happiness isn't found in ideal circumstances. It lies in your ability to remain steady in imperfect ones. A busy day won't exhaust you if you don't meet it with irritation. A criticism won't break you if you don't let it define your worth. A crisis won't make you lose control if you see it as part of a larger journey. Everything is about response, and you can relearn how to respond at any moment. The world may not change, but if you change how you respond, you will see the world differently, because you no longer view things through the lens of wounds, defense, or impulsiveness. You see through a mind trained to be aware, to choose a response rather than react. And when you live this way long enough, what once hurt you will no longer have power. What once worried you will seem ordinary. You are no longer controlled by circumstances. You become the calm center in the midst of outer chaos. You don't need a special course or someone to rescue you from negative emotions. You just need to realize true happiness is not the absence of problems, but the presence of intentional responses. And if you start today with small responses, you are building a new nervous system, a stronger mind, a life you truly own from within. People often think that a life purpose must be something grand, extraordinary, something that changes the world, leaves a historic legacy, or involves doing something so special that millions remember your name. But it's exactly that expectation that leaves many confused, exhausted, and lost, because they believe that if they haven't found that great thing, they must be living wrongly. While the truth is much simpler, life purpose isn't about something huge, but anything that makes you feel life is more meaningful each day. If every morning you wake up and know why you're getting out of bed, you've already touched the very core of what it means to live with purpose. Not everyone is born to invent, to speak, to lead, or to create a sweeping ideology, but everyone can live purposefully by discovering what makes them feel truly alive instead of just surviving. It could be caring for an ill-loved one, raising a kind-hearted child, running a small bookstore that spreads knowledge, or simply living each day in a way that you won't regret when night falls. Purpose isn't measured by scale, but by the fullness you feel inside. If what you're doing makes your presence feel worthwhile, then that's a purpose big enough to protect and nurture. No one but you can define what your life purpose is, because it's not mapped out on a career plan, not hidden in someone else's advice, and not waiting for you at the end of a success journey. It has often been there all along in the moments when you feel most truly alive, in the activities that make you forget time, in the things you do not for reward or to prove anything, but because you simply can't not do them. What moves your heart into silence with emotion? What would you sacrifice time and energy for without hesitation? That's where you should begin to look. Many people spend their whole lives chasing what they think is purpose, but drift further away from true inner connection. They chase fame, power, achievement, and then at some point feel empty because they no longer know why they started. They live by what others call success and forget what gives them a sense of meaning. Because real purpose is not what makes others applaud, but what makes you want to continue, even when no one is clapping. If you feel there's enough reason to live for it, then no one else needs to understand or validate it. I'm worth shit. I'm loved, accepted. That's enough safety. That's some form of healing. Someone who sweeps the neighborhood each morning out of love for cleanliness and the peace of their neighbors lives no less purposefully than a renowned scientist. Someone who pours their whole presence into preparing family meals lives no less purposefully than someone working in an international organization. Because it's not about what you do, but how you do it. If there is love, dedication, and a sense of contribution, then any action can be an expression of deep purpose. Living with purpose is not a journey to find some ultimate destination, but a choice to live meaningfully in each moment. It's knowing that everything you do, even the smallest act, contributes to something bigger than yourself, even if you don't see it immediately. It's understanding that being fully present in a conversation, helping someone when they need it, or planting a seed of hope in another's heart is also part of a meaningful life. When you live like that, you don't need to search for purpose because you are already living it. Every person has an instinct to contribute, but many misunderstand contribution as needing to do something grand. In truth, what the world needs is not another symbol of success, but more people who live kindly, deeply, and fully present. People who live not to prove, but to connect, not to win, but to radiate, not to conquer, but to nourish. And you can absolutely be that kind of person if you stop searching for purpose somewhere out there and begin to live purposefully from today. You'll know you're living right when you feel full on the inside, even when the outside is quiet, when you no longer need to boast about anything because you feel peace in your daily actions, when you're no longer haunted by the need to do something big, but simply want to live kindly with what you have. That's when purpose is no longer a vague concept, but becomes a steady, silent rhythm that guides you each day. The world won't remember your name, your titles, or the possessions you once owned, but the world will be touched by the energy you leave behind in everything you did with love and presence. And if you live like that every day, then even if you're never written into record books, you'll still leave a mark that cannot be erased. You lived with purpose. Not because it was grand, but because it was deeply meaningful. Many people feel lost in life, not because they have nothing in their hands, but because they believe that unless they achieve something grand, everything they're doing is meaningless. But it is precisely this belief that erodes their sense of value day by day. Because purpose is not a dazzling milestone waiting at the end of the road. Purpose is what you touch every time you choose to do the right thing, even when no one sees it. It does not lie in the scale of the act, but in the depth you bring into the smallest details. A heartfelt check-in, patience with someone who is struggling, full presence in a conversation. All of these carry profound purpose when done with sincerity and awareness. And I must add, when rendered, some spend their whole lives dreaming of the day they will begin living with purpose. Yet they forget that every small decision today is already a piece of the larger picture. When you dismiss the small details, you are letting the soul of purpose slip through your fingers. Because anything, no matter how small, when done with responsibility and love, becomes a sacred act. Someone who listens with their heart without judgment is doing something more transformative than many grand speeches. Someone who cleans a corner of their home out of deep respect for their living space is embodying a philosophy worthy of admiration. Purpose doesn't need to be hung on a wall like a mission statement. It needs to be breathed into everyday action. Wise people don't wait until they have enough time, money, or ideal circumstances to live with purpose. They begin with what is closest, today. They know that if they wait for a special occasion to be kind, to devote themselves, to live meaningfully, they are letting life slip by, leaving nothing behind but postponements. The way you greet the morning, the way you respond to a small situation, the way you act when no one is watching, that is the true measure of the purpose you're living. Because what cannot be repeated in small things will never be strong enough to last in big ones. You don't need a stage. You need a clear intention. And that intention can be planted into every action. When you choose to treat a stranger kindly, when you take a few minutes to clear up a misunderstanding instead of letting it slide, when you finish something even though no one is pushing you, you're reaffirming to yourself, I don't live to chase outcomes. I live to be fully present in the process. And that process, step by step, is quietly shaping a life with deep purpose. Every act you do, no matter how anonymous or insignificant it seems, carries within it a quiet declaration. I live for a reason. Once you understand this, you'll no longer need validation, nor anything external to feel complete. You'll stop seeing your work as ordinary or your life as unremarkable, because you've recognized value in each moment. And once you see it, you have the right to transform that moment into a meaningful part of your journey. Observe a potter at work. They're not trying to create something grand. They simply shape each curve carefully, adjust each detail, and stay patient through each spin of the wheel. But it is precisely that attention that makes all the difference. Not because the final vase is extraordinary, but because of how they place their heart into every layer of clay. Your life is like that too. You are your own craftsman. You don't need to create a masterpiece instantly. You just need steady hands in every small movement. Time will take care of the rest. Many people write out a long, inspiring life purpose statement, but then live each day far removed from it. Purpose doesn't need to be written in formal language. It needs to be lived out quietly. You don't need to say, I live to help the world. You only need to help one specific person, in one specific moment, through one specific act. Each day you do that, you are walking the right path, not the path defined by others' standards, but one that aligns with the values you choose to carry. If you feel lost, don't search for answers in distant places. Come back to what's nearest. What can you do today, something small, to make someone feel valued, to make a space a little better, to carry out a task with more care? When you can answer that and act on it, you're no longer searching for purpose. You're already living in it. And the miracle is this: the more small right things you do, the more you are naturally led to larger, deeper things, without force. There is no excess in a life lived with awareness. No action is too small if done with a pure intention and full presence. And if you can maintain that attitude over time, you'll no longer need to ask, "What is my life purpose?" You'll see it in every breath you don't waste, in every relationship you don't take for granted, in every decision you don't make half-heartedly. You won't need a destination to feel you're on the right path, because each step will already be the evidence. No one can walk far if every step carries the burden of self-condemnation. No one can truly be happy if each day is lived within an inner dialogue full of criticism and torment. What destroys inner peace isn't the outside world. It's the harsh voice inside your head, the cruel whispers each time you make a mistake, fall behind, or fail to meet expectations. Many people think the more they blame themselves, the more they grow. But the truth is, no sustainable progress is built from shame and self-punishment. All real change begins with kindness toward oneself. You can set high standards, you can aim to become a better version of yourself, but if every time you fall short you turn to self-hatred and self-contempt, then you are not growing. You're digging a deep hole inside your own heart that eventually even you won't want to live in. There is no one you're closer to than yourself. If you lived in a house where every day you were bombarded with scolding, comparisons, and judgments, you'd want to leave. And if you turn your own mind into such a place, you are cutting yourself off from any path that leads back to peace. Kindness is not leniency. It's not making excuses or blaming circumstances. It's the recognition that you are human. And being human means being strong sometimes, weak other times, sometimes shining, sometimes lost, sometimes right, sometimes wrong. Being kind to yourself means having the courage to face your mistakes, but not nailing yourself to them. It means learning the lesson that needs to be learned without carrying a life sentence. It means continuing forward with clearer awareness, not with a heart torn apart by regret. You don't need to become someone else to deserve love. You don't need to be perfect to be treated kindly by your own self. The compassion you offer others is the same compassion you should offer yourself. Don't criticize yourself for not being as far along as someone else. They have a different journey, a different starting point, a different set of circumstances. You weren't born to compete with anyone, but to live honestly with your own path. And that path always requires self-compassion, not to stop, but to have the strength to keep going. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself after a mistake. Are you using words you would never say to a friend in pain? Are you repeating things like, "I'm awful," "I'm worthless," "I always screw up"? If so, stop. Because that's not mindfulness. That's a habit of self-destruction. And no one can build a happy life on a foundation of curses from their own mouth. Self-blame drags you into the past. Kindness brings you back to the present. And only in the present do you have the power to choose again. When you are kind to yourself, you create space for healing. You do not deny your mistakes, but you also do not let them define you. You learn to distinguish between "I did something wrong" and "I am a bad person." These are two very different things. One refers to behavior, the other to identity. And you don't need to equate the two. Actions can be corrected. But if you reject yourself, you're cutting off the root of all improvement. The harsher you are with yourself, the easier it becomes to be harsh with others. The more you lack inner compassion, the more reactive you'll be to the world around you. On the other hand, when you learn to speak to yourself with gentleness, You begin to see others with more tolerance, and from there, you live with lighter energy, more openness, no longer straining to prove anything, no longer shrinking from your mistakes, no longer carrying the shame of what cannot be changed. One of the clearest signs of maturity is not that you make fewer mistakes, but that you know how to get back up faster, more gently, without mentally knocking yourself down a second time. Happiness comes from a healthy relationship with yourself, and that health cannot be built from judgment. It only comes when you can say, I was wrong, but I still deserve to move forward. When you believe that you are still worthy, you won't give up. You won't fall into the cycle of self-rejection, but instead walk the path of self-support with resilience and compassion. Each day is a chance to begin again. Not because you failed yesterday that you lose your right to be happy today. Not because you once made mistakes that you must live forever in remorse. The past is a place to learn, not a place to stay. You've been through it to understand what you need more clearly, and now you can start again, not from zero, but from a deeper understanding of yourself. Don't wait until you become a better version to love yourself. Start now. Look in the mirror and say the words you need to hear. Forgive yourself for moments of immaturity, for choices made unconsciously, for reactions you hadn't yet learned to control. Promise yourself that you'll do better, not because you deserve punishment, but because you deserve peace. And from that place, happiness begins to grow, not from something grand, but from a very simple decision to be kind to yourself, starting today. No chain binds a person as long and as deeply as unresolved guilt. People